Welcome back to another explainer. Today, we're diving straight into what has to be one of the most bizarre what-if aviation mysteries out there. A commercial flight lands perfectly, but with absolutely no one inside. It's the kind of scenario that literally forces us to question everything we know about physics, aviation, and honestly, reality itself. Okay, picture this. You're watching a massive passenger plane touch down safely on the runway. The engines spool down, ground crews roll up to the aircraft, they open the doors, and nothing. Every single passenger has just vanished. Imagine being the airport staff rushing onto that newly landed plane, only to find no bodies, no blood, no signs of a struggle, just an empty metal tube. It sounds completely impossible, right? But aviation history is packed with these strange anomalies that inspire terrified fascination, and today we're going to break down one of the weirdest. Section 1. The Phantom Landing. Our story begins like any normal day, but quickly spirals into a terrifying unknown. Let's break down the jarring contrast of this mystery. We start out with a totally normal flight. Perfect weather, the pilots sound completely calm on the radio. It's just your standard, routine journey. But then you contrast that with the landing. Empty seats, complete, eerie silence. And get this, not a single emergency call was ever made. Nothing. So the big question is, how on earth do we get from a perfect takeoff to an abandoned ghost aircraft just sitting there on the tarmac?
Well, let's track the timeline to see how this builds, because it's wild. The takeoff, perfectly routine. Mid-flight, investigators actually recovered normal conversations from the black box, just the flight crew chatting about everyday stuff. But then, right in the final minutes of the descent, we get sudden static. Just static, and nothing else. And yet, defying all logic, the timeline wraps up with a perfect radar approach and a completely safe touchdown. The aircraft somehow navigated its descent flawlessly.
Which brings us to Section 2, evidence from the crime scene, because we have to treat this empty cabin exactly like a detective would treat a true crime scene. When investigators meticulously searched every single inch of this aircraft, what they found, or I guess what they didn't find, is chilling. It's like an eerie snapshot of vanished lives. You've got half-finished drinks just sitting there on tray tables. Carry-on bags are still securely stuffed into the overhead bins. Blankets are draped over empty seats. They literally tore the plane apart looking for answers, but they found 0 hidden compartments. And absolutely crucial here, no signs of violence whatsoever. No struggle, no panic. It's as if hundreds of people just ceased to exist right in the middle of taking a sip of coffee. But here is the absolute wildest part. Maintenance crews later made this bizarre discovery. Several passenger watches had all stopped at the exact same second. Think about the sheer improbability of that for a second. We're not talking about mechanical watches just naturally winding down or breaking because of an impact. We're talking about multiple, completely independent timepieces freezing simultaneously, 1 exact second. And that leaves investigators, and honestly anyone following this case, asking a massive question. Is this synchronized stopping of time just some freak, random coincidence? Or is it literally the most important clue left behind? In any investigation, when multiple mechanical or digital devices fail all at once like that, it usually points to a massive, sudden external force. Was it an electromagnetic pulse? A sudden violent shift in atmospheric pressure? Or is it something we don't even have a name for yet? That leads us right into Section 3, leading scientific theories, because experts definitely stepped in to try and explain the unexplainable. Let's walk through the leading attempts to solve this impossible puzzle. First up, we've got the atmospheric phenomenon theory. Experts here suggest some undiscovered severe weather event could have caused a rapid, catastrophic anomaly in the cabin. Then there's the military experiment angle, which points the finger at a highly classified government operation that maybe intercepted the flight midair. And finally, the dimensional slip. Yeah, the idea that the passengers somehow entered another dimension, leaving the physical plane behind. Now, while we're not taking any sides or endorsing any specific viewpoint here, we're just impartially laying out the source material, it is absolutely fascinating to see how the scientific and investigative communities will stretch the very limits of physics to try and make sense of this. But as years pass, we hit Section 4, the impossible paradox. Because every single one of these leading theories hits a massive, unsolvable roadblock. Here is the linchpin of the entire mystery. Not a single theory actually explains why the empty plane landed safely. The scariest mysteries out there are often the ones with zero evidence, and the biggest, most glaring flaw in all of these theories, whether you're leaning toward a military cover-up or some freak weather event, is that none of them account for that perfect radar approach and safe touchdown. Commercial planes do not just align themselves with a runway, adjust their speed, flare out, and brake to a safe halt completely on their own without active guidance or an actual pilot in the seat. Which brings us to the ultimate chilling paradox of this whole explainer. If every single pilot and passenger vanished mid-flight, who or what actually landed the aircraft? Even if, say, an autopilot system was engaged, modern aviation requires human interaction for those complex final stages of landing, communicating with the control tower, extending the flaps, shutting down the engines. The physical evidence screams that the plane was totally empty, but the flight path says someone was definitely flying it. Sometimes the scariest mysteries aren't the ones we can explain. They're the ones that leave us with a perfectly intact puzzle, but all the crucial pieces are just missing. I want to leave you with this provocative thought. If you were the very first person to walk into that empty plane, what would you think happened? Seriously, put yourself there. You take in the half-finished drinks, the watches stopped at the exact same second, the static on the black box, and that completely impossible perfect landing. Drop your theory in the comments below on what you think really went down in that silent cabin. And hey, don't forget to subscribe for more unbelievable explainer deep dives. Thanks for exploring this one with me.